Yeah. And my oh, we just barely got it with a 7. All right. So call the meeting to order.
We have a quorum.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Oh,
Yeah,
there's only
nobody
3.
online yet.
3. We're 3.
There were
Ellie is
okay.
Good.
online.
Okay, so finally, thank you for coming and making us a quorum. So our first item is public comment. I'm gonna guess that you maybe have some public comment.
Is this the appropriate time to mention something about the Glazer specific plan, or is this too
If you'd
soon?
like
Or
to
do
make
they-
a public comment about it, absolutely, yeah.
All right,
Introduce
there's a
yourself. Yeah.
misconception that I think most people don't realize. I farmed the land for 50 years. I farmed it for the Ezermans before the Glazers bought it. And the comment that I've heard is that the land that is being given to the townies of no value. Actually, there were 2 dwellings on that land when we moved there with sewer systems. And there are considerable areas which would put me out of business, unfortunately, but lie behind my farm that are actually dry enough to be developed. So he is giving something to the town, so it's not wetland that's useless. And I wanted to make that point.
I guess I had gathered that, I didn't know about the historic presence of houses, I think, but Ken had made clear that, you know, a more finely detailed plan of, you know, with only development in mind, could have carved out additional potential lots. So that definitely got through to me, I don't know, everybody,
would-
but.
There were, the one of the houses was on the field that overlooks Turtle Pond.
Okay,
And there's a big pasture there now with
Yeah.
horses in it, and then if you go down Turtle Pond Road. And you go towards the Glazers and the Savage House, that's where the other dwelling was.
okay, yeah.
And there, that whole section is actually reasonably dry,
Uh-huh.
and it isn't a wetland, and what Mr. Glazer told me when I asked him about it. Was that since he wanted to leave that section open for the farm, he didn't have the wetland survey actually conducted there.
He told us that, yeah.
Yeah.
But in reading the map, I also thought there was a possibility that because there were already 3 houses on that driveway or that
Winters.
Windridge Lane, and at a certain point you have to bring it up to a different. I didn't know if it was approaching the place where if you put more houses there that were on that road, you'd have to be a lot of road improvement.
You can do 5 on a driveway in
Yeah.
Williston. After that, really it jumps up to a street standard. So what might happen is you stub the street standard in until you've accessed such that
Yes.
everything beyond is no more than 5. So,
I see.
but yeah, there's kind of a natural
So
break there.
I thought it
When
might
you
have been.
factor those things in, it makes the donation that he's doing much more significant.
Yeah.
Than wetland, which you couldn't
Yeah.
use for anything else.
I didn't catch your name.
I'm Mike Moss.
Oh.
Well, you see people from across the room.
All right, we're now.
Yes,
Yeah,
and I missed the last one.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, and the last one we voted to move forward the committee, and we're just about to jump into putting it together. I'll be the planning commission's representative on the committee.
Okay,
So, yeah, I appreciate hearing that, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that kind of detail.
all right, great.
Yeah.
So if you need me no longer, then I will leave you to your business.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thank you, you as
All
well.
right, thank you. Thanks for making the effort to come out. Okay, so we have minutes.
and you're also welcome to write us or email us to the staff and they'll give us for our next
Yeah,
meeting.
Emily actually sent me a note asking that I do site maps of current use and projected use, assuming this goes through. How it would affect the farm, which I dropped off actually today.
Okay,
And then she wanted me to do a narrative description of how the farm functions, and I dropped that off as well.
Sweet.
So that you'll have that information when you need it.
Thank you.
And if you need any input, since I have lived there for so long, if you need any input, I know every pothole on that
Yes.
piece of land. And every stone. Have a
thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you so much.
I'd like that.
Okay. Minutes.
The. No, it's not exact consistent.
Yeah, if we can just kind of scroll through them visually.
I made only one small change, I think. Someone else made a couple of.
These
other
are very detailed minutes.
Yes,
They're
and
very detailed. I'm not really sure they needed to be that detailed.
and I
But-
agreed with these changes, like where some stuff was taken out, that was more detailed.
Yeah, and that, I guess that was me. I felt like it was a little too much detail, especially about our
Yeah.
deliberations about membership on the committee. Um,
I agree.
so, I don't know if everybody else has had a chance to look at them before. Ellie, have you had a chance to read? Okay. You,
I looked at them on my phone. and
all right, there you go.
So I'll move. As amended.
Okay. Do I have a second? Okay, Alex is seconding. Sorry, we have quick flies around here.
Uh-oh.
Oh, house plan, yep, the guilty party. Okay, so all in favor of accepting the minutes as amended, raise your hand or say aye. Thank you, that's four. Four. All right, later specific plan, do you want to update us on this? So the
sure.
DRB's discussion,
And
and then we can,
Andrew, you were there, so feel free to fill in, but essentially the DRB in discussing, they had looked at the draft minutes of the planning commission, they understood some of the conversation around Scott Riley's appointment, they wanted to stick with that appointment and convey that back. I think we've had some follow-up conversation and just, emphasizing Scott's role on the DRB and that there's really very, very, very little likelihood Scott would ever be involved with this particular development or anything in competition with it. As a member of the DRB for longer than I've been staffing the DRB, it's very familiar with the way it works. And, particularly if the committee gets to the point of drafting some amendments to the bylaws, it's really helpful to have a DRB member who can say, okay, when we get that language, here's how it's going to process for us.
And John Hildegard did that some on the MECS claim.
Yep.
But I want to say I'm fine with it. I do think that there are members of the public who are suspicious of conflicts of interest and it'll take things for them, but I think we have to go with what the DRB says.
when Matt and Emily and I talked last week about this, I suggested that we have some kind of communication about the benefits that Scott brings to the process, his knowledge and expertise, and kind of get out in front of it that way and
emphasize
Yeah.
the role.
and emphasize the role, emphasize that, he's the representative of the DRB to the advisory committee. And yeah, so I'm totally fine with it as well. Do we need to vote on that or?
As long as it's a consensus of the group to
Yeah.
accept that,
All
I
right.
think that's fine. And
Ellie, did that get a thumbs up from you? You and, okay, great, thanks.
And so while you're on this topic, I just wanted to mention that, I've been in conversations with the DRB chair about it and, I think for the planning commission going through the three main meetings in regards to the specific plan decision, you experienced something very similar to what the
But
DRB
they get
experienced very
everybody-
frequently. And you experience sometimes a public that is suspicious of motives and also oftentimes a misconception that these processes are wide open for just any old decision by the board and when really they are, even with specific plan, following criteria and a procedure. That all exists in the bylaws to help the citizen boards make decisions in small bites and not just have to make it up all as they go along. The planning commission has a tough job, the DRB has a tough job. It would be good if we could get together for just sort of an informal meet and greet and eat some pizza. It's the suggestion of the DRB chair, which is always favorable to the staff. Maybe talk about how some things are going in terms of the DRB's administration of the bylaws, and the planning commission's work on amending them. And we'd really like to do that like once a year. And then also, one of the other things we talked about with the DRB chairs, we do a big, long Zoom instructions introduction at the beginning of every DRB meeting. And we have in the past, at the beginning of more controversial hearings, done a little bit of a public service announcement about, this is the DRB, they are administering the bylaw. The bylaw is signed off on by the select board. Bylaw changes are recommended by the planning commission. They must be in accordance with the town plan. We're talking about kind of making that even more routine and kind of maybe doing something parallel at some point with the planning commission too, to say, okay, so this is the body that talks about changes to the zoning and are the keepers of the draft of the town plan. And maybe the more that message is repeated, and it can be very, very brief, the more that's just kind of out there and helps inform the rest of the public that these two boards are carrying out their respective roles and what those roles are. So
I feel like I've been doing that a little bit, just saying things like we're a volunteer board, we, the planning commission and and that we're like your neighbors.
Hello.
We're not like
We live in this community.
coming in to, disrupt the planning of Williston.
And from the staff point of view, none of us could do what we do if there weren't citizen boards in this process. Everything we do is to inform the activities of those citizen boards, and it's what really makes the town the people's town. And we have vacancies on some of these boards that we very much like to fill. We've opened up the planning commission alternate conversation again with the manager, and we have clearance to go ahead and recruit for that.
Okay.
We have a DRB vacancy. We have vacancies sometimes on our advisory boards, and then we have these ad hoc committees that we need to fill as well. And our job as staff, besides just giving you good, clear, accurate information and direction, is also to try to make it as feasible as possible for regular old citizens to serve on these boards. And at some point, there's just the hours that have to be put in. But it shouldn't have to be an activity that's also confusing or frustrating or draws the ire and disrespect of your fellow citizens.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to help strike that balance of supporting the board and also advocating for the board's role. We're open to using the Planner's Corner tool to press releases, to helping with letters to the editor and the observer, et cetera. All of those things have proven fruitful in the past. Happy to be there for you to do that.
Ruben Escorpiso is online and he says he'd like to make a comment.
Oh, okay. Hi, Ruben.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that this is a very interesting topic, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I joined tonight's meeting. Is public perception is powerful, and I think that perception is perception, and we can't control that necessarily. However, I was wondering if there's any way by which brief profiles of the members of any commissions by the town is being made public, potential conflicts of interest. So that way, everything is transparent. I'm the owner of this, I'm the developer of this, but, because we always, I think it'll be of interest to the public to make sure that they know who the people are, what the potential conflicts of interest is or are, and that those conflicts of interest need to be declared beforehand. So it's just a thought, because I do think that the public perception is informed widely by experience, by history. And again, I think that perception is a very powerful thing that we cannot just ignore.
Yeah, thank you. I will just point out, I think this is a really good thing. Linda, I don't know if can you navigate to the Conservation Commission site
Yeah, sure.
on the town website, because on the Conservation Commission, there is actually like a little profile of all the members.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would be up here.
And I noticed that and just kind of cruising around,
So
like those folks.
Whoops, he doesn't have anything. Whoops.
Yeah, who is that guy?
That mysterious person.
All right,
The one person who
here.
doesn't have a profile.
There's Kim.
Okay, so Kim, who I know. You know, Kim has her profile and a little bit about her background and like what she likes to do and that kind of stuff. And I think not just for conflict of interest, I just think that this is a really good practice across all boards. And I would love to have this. I don't know how the Conservation Commission got this done. It was maybe you were in charge of that, Melinda. I don't know.
Probably, which is probably why the reasons why it's not complete.
No, that's the thing. But it's a really good precedent, and I think that would be super helpful. So people can see who are these people who are speaking at these meetings. What kinds of interests do they represent? What's their background? What's their,
Yeah.
you know, what do they like to do? What do they do in their free time, right? So, so that would just be a quick response, Ruben. I do appreciate your kind of broader comment about, you know, about kind of connecting. Excuse me. And being very transparent. So. Absolutely. Does anyone else in the planning commission want to respond?
I'll make one comment, which is just, I've received a ton of positive comments. Like we get in those meetings where the controversy is there, but coming out of those meetings, I heard from a lot of people about how happy they were with the process, with the laser plan. And people responding. I think I only heard these ones because I got quoted in that article, but you know, I think a lot of people are out there, that sort of silent majority of citizens who are like, hey, I really respect what these people are doing. But I don't think it's clear to everybody we're volunteers. And I think even on that conservation committee, those profiles, it would be really helpful to split like volunteer, town citizen, member.
We will solicit headshots and bios.
That's right.
It is a great idea. I think it just humanizes the committees.
Right.
I think that's really wise.
That's a great idea. So we can do that.
I have two things to add. One is that I had a conversation with someone, I don't think I'll mention their name but someone who participated and spoke at the meetings about the Glazer plan. And they were they didn't understand how come so many people spoke against having that development and not valuing the viewshed. And yet we went that way. And when I said, well, we're looking out for the long-term interest, not just what people say in the moment, because that's our job. And then it was, well, what about the height of the buildings at Taft Corners? More people were against that. You know, if a small group of people shouldn't think they are the town and what they think is right, it should happen. And my response is that we do represent the town, but we represent the town's long-term interest. And when we go through the town plan process, we get a lot of input. And we put that in the town plan. And then when a specific thing comes up and it's in someone's backyard and they don't want it, we say, well, it meets the town plan. That we're sort of the conscience of the town as expressed through the town plan process. But then we sometimes are implementing that in the moment, like with the Glazer property or whatever. And so, we think higher buildings will better meet our long-term goals of having less land taken up by residences in the long run. And not because we want to speed up development or any of that. We're talking about density. So everything gets kind of mushed sometimes. And there's this feeling that we are not being responsive to the people who are speaking. If they come and speak and then we don't heed them, they feel we are feeling that we know better. And I was trying to say, and this could go in our front page, just that we are looking out for the 25-year or longer vision as expressed to us through the town plan process. The other thing I wanted to say is if Snyder Homes wanted to be the contractor on this project, if it goes ahead, that is a problem. And I hope that Scott recognizes that basically all hell would break loose if he were on this committee and then somebody he was financially involved with then were the implementer.
Yeah,
I'm assuming he's aware of that.
yeah, I mean, I think it's always possible that a developer might, buy a permitted project that another developer had initiated. That's been really rare in Williston. It's usually happened because somebody went bankrupt and somebody else picked up the project to finish it. So I think the risk is low there, but yes, I do think Scott's aware of concerns like that. The other thing I'll just say, because you said it about, the planning commission is, really trying to hold a lot of different things when making a decision, one of which is what's happening in the town plan and what are the policies of the town plan. And, for folks to begin to become aware that we're going to start writing a new town plan very soon, and we're going to start publicizing the opportunity to participate in that process very soon, spring and summer. That is a place to come and participate. And the other part of that is it's the job of the planning commission to realize that nobody gets everything they want and everything is a compromise. And that you can have this, you can have some, open space, but you might need some density somewhere else. And you can have some economic development, but you might need some conservation land somewhere else, et cetera, et cetera. Resources are limited. The town's budget is only so big. We see that play out. I did see the sidewalk plow in the ARPA note under discussion by the select board tonight. So that process and that discussion and the public input is important. And what people have to say to the planning commission is important and is heard and is weighed along with everything else. Just as the select board weighed all of that input they got toward the end of the form-based code process about taller buildings. And they weighed it against knowing that there had been this other public process conducted over many months. And against all those other factors you mentioned. But we are coming into that once in every 8 years opportunity for people to really paint that broader picture of what they want the 25-year horizon. We're calling that effort Williston 2050. We're reflecting that the 2025 plan will have a horizon set at close to 2050.
Which is short in some regards.
Yeah.
The non-native Americans have been here for 200 years.
Right.
Sure, plus, sure.
And just like to piggyback on what you said about the town plan process, like that is absolutely the most appropriate time to have a robust public process is in kind of making that long range planning. And then if you do it, and the more the public is involved, the more buy-in there is. And I mean, ideally, the less conflict you have with these decisions that, although I know that's not really the case, but
Imagine what it would be like without it.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah.
if it helps, you can use me as a poster child because I joined the planning commission after having spent a couple of years participating in the town plan rewrite process and attending a whole lot of planning commission meetings. And finally saying, I might as well join.
That's a great point. That process is a really good tool to bring people out of the woodwork and get participating with the town as well. And we're really hoping, our entire focus around our municipal planning grant application was on the public engagement piece of the town plan and to really do that throughout FY24. Following up with some assistance in early FY25 around writing, but really to invest very, very heavily in being able to go to people where they are and get their input on the town plan and not rely on those more sort of traditional, come to the meeting on Tuesday night and tell us what you think. Because we know who we get for that, and it's a very, very small sample of the town. And we know there are other folks out there that we can get input from if we go to them. So that's the hope.
Great. Great. So thank you, Ruben, for sparking that conversation. So let's move on then to the housing needs assessment update.
Would you like me to?
Want me to start?
I can start. Yeah, so as part of the UPWP work plan, we put in for getting CCRPC assistance with a housing needs assessment, really coming directly out of the form-based code process, where we heard, a lot from community members about really wanting to do something about the lack of housing and the lack of affordable housing. So Vermont Housing Finance Agency staff wrote a draft of that, and we are sort of in the process of revising that draft and really kind of coming up with a pretty good, what we think is a pretty good polished document to share. And so that is we expect that to be completed pretty soon, and we would like to present it at the February 7th meeting of your meeting. And Darren Shibler from CCRPC will be, he's working mostly with me on revising the document, and he's going to be presenting at that meeting.
So is this all data about the need?
Yes. Yeah, and just to give you a little preview, I mean, we're looking at data on the amount of housing, the cost of housing in relationship to workers in Williston, and worker wages.
So I'm guessing that this will mostly reinforce what we already think we know.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that people who work in Tap Corners area can't
Yeah.
afford to live
Yeah.
there. I don't know if it's the right time to ask this, but I just know that several other municipalities around us have inclusionary zoning in their bylaws.
Mhm.
And does one of them have bylaws that we could sort of plagiarize? And I mean,
Yeah,
it's in a positive way. It's actually a form of compliment.
Yeah, no, it sort of leads into the next conversation, which I mean,
Yeah, so maybe I'm getting ahead of our.
so inclusionary zoning is something to consider. There are pros and cons to it, and you're right that a lot of communities around us, or some communities around Williston, have adopted it. And there's some really good examples out there, I think. So yeah, absolutely. Using prior work on this will definitely be
I could
helpful.
tip my hand completely and just say that after years and years of trying to incentivize affordable housing
Right.
with very low results,
Yeah.
that I feel that reluctantly we need to basically regulate it. And by inclusionary zoning, I assume that projects over a certain size need a certain percent of their units to meet certain criteria. And also that there might be some third party that certifies stuff, and so it's not just a spreadsheet coming into the office.
Yeah.
So, I think we tend to read those example inclusionary zoning provisions with a little bit of trepidation, because they are quite complicated to administer. And if you're trying to get something that's perpetually affordable, you're adding a management task to the town's to-do list essentially forever. So I want to back out a little bit and just sort of preview for you the needs assessment and where it might lead. One thing we are really trying to do with somewhat limited resources is have a needs assessment that puts, if not some exact numbers, some orders of magnitude on what that need is. So
Yes.
thinking about the kinds of jobs that are in Williston, the kind of people who would like to live in Williston, what their income levels are, and what kind of housing product that looks like and what kind of things could happen to the housing supply in Williston that could meet that need. And I think we will be able to use what we've gotten in the needs assessment to help the commission and broader community understand what those orders of magnitude are. And I would encourage folks who are thinking about policies to think about the effectiveness of those policies in terms of how much of a bite do they take out of that need.
Yeah.
And I'm jumping ahead of myself because I think one of the first things that's going to be really important for the community planning commission, but I think also select board, is to look at that need, which is going to look like a lot of dwellings, and consciously say, we are going to pursue going after all of this need, going after some of this need, doing it over this time frame, doing it over this longer time frame. And not in a way where it's like you're signing a contract with yourself, but to say, okay, we've looked at this, we understand the size of the challenge that we face. We've decided that we would like to go after however much of that challenge, 100%, 80%, whatever it is. And we would like to review our potential policy changes against how effective they will be in comparison to that, magnitude of the challenge. And I'm really going to encourage folks to think that way. I think that what I'm perceiving from the needs assessment is that the need is relatively large compared to the policy impacts we've often been talking about. And there are other policy moves out there that might take out a bigger chunk of the need. They will not be uncontroversial. And I think it's really important for the community, both this group and the select board, to review the needs assessment and say, number one, we understand that some of the policies that we pursue may be controversial, but we do so with some level of commitment to some amount of the need. And I think if folks are on board with sort of getting over that hump first, it might make it easier to have a more focused and careful conversation about some of those policies. We're talking about the creation of dwellings in Williston. It touches growth management. It touches what we see as a midterm need to refine that system, to think about managing the kind of growth that is seen as less desirable in town and encouraging the kind that is seen as more desirable. We want to think about inclusionary zoning in terms of both the number of affordable units it might create and in terms of the number or types of projects that it might simply render infeasible, because that does happen with inclusionary zoning, and just balance those things. And also think about other non-regulatory things that might help with the challenge, whether those are budgetary or programmatic. And so I'm really excited for this. I think the HFA, along with CCRPC and staff here, have done a great job putting something together that's relatively easy to understand. The first step is admitting you have a problem and you know how big it is.
Yeah.
And I think, going back to a conversation I had with sort of the renewed Citizens for Responsible Growth that showed up in 2019, early 2020, when we were talking about the Glazer property on Brookport Forum. And I was in a room full of Williston citizens who had really varying opinions about whether affordable housing was a problem at all, whether it was a community problem or an individual problem, and whether the town ought to do anything at all about it. And when I'm hearing voices like that, that says to me, let's back up, let's assess. And then I think under the leadership of the Planning Commission and ultimately to the Select Board, the policymakers, as best as possible, if they are nodding heads on this is what we want to get to, it will really help the staff do our work in developing and focusing on those things. So we don't go too far down a trail that we bring you something and you say, no, guys, not 10-story buildings, et cetera.
I think that's a safe bet.
I think that's a safe bet. We won't bring you 10-story buildings. We won't be bringing any number of story buildings as part of this.
I think all the things you said are true. And in order to tip the balance to make the progress we need to make, we probably need to do something regulatory. And that's why I was putting it right out up front that I'm of the opinion that it's gonna, that there's so many things we should try. But there's so many things we've already tried with so little result that I feel like we need to. We have ground to make up in a sense.
Does this report include like the recommendations, or are you guys first gonna come back with needs assessment and then we'll sort of ask you guys to come back with
There-
recommendations?
There's kind of like a sort of a bullet list of possible policy recommendations that Darren's working on right now, but it won't be at all like, like fully developed
No.
or
I
fleshed out or
personally-
anything like that.
Peter, you sound like you have some history of knowledge of things we've tried. I don't have a lot of history here. I would love to know what we've tried.
Yeah, and
It'd be really
and
valuable.
that actually, we are gonna put together that, like a list of policies that we've tried and what they've resulted in, yeah.
Most have had some results.
Some, yeah.
And I think we can go over that and look critically at it. And think about, I mean, I think honestly, all of the things in the world that the town could do probably won't achieve 100% of the solution here.
Of course.
Housing is a federal plus level
Mhm.
issue at best.
It seems as though South Burlington lately on Market Street has done a lot of affordable housing projects. And do we have some things to learn from their experience?
Yeah,
Yes. I
Definitely.
think we do. In a very general sense, I think that the investment the city has made in making city center South Burlington an attractive place to be really sort of tilled the field for it to be a place that it made the most sense for Champlain Housing Trust and now UVM to invest in.
It was a swamp, not a field, but yes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And really, having been on the sidelines of the development of city center and all of the problem solving that's gone into getting infrastructure in there, getting financing mechanisms in there via tax increment financing to build those streets, the horsepower that's necessary for the city to be such a change maker for itself is really kind of incredible. But you're looking at it now going, wow, like, UVM and UVM Medical are actually going to make some really substantial progress on their housing needs in a way that's mutually beneficial to the city in terms of making that place work. So those are the kinds of things I start to think about. Future Trader Lane in Taft Corners is not much different in size than Market Street in South Burlington. And when you think of everything the city had to invest to make Market Street work, we've put Trader Lane on a map and said what kind of street we'd like it to be. And you talked to the landowner, but that's really very preliminary by comparison. So all of that is going to play into housing. It's going to play into the town plan. It's going to play into bylaw work that we are continuing with as well. I think I've got to run to the select board. I hopefully will be back. If I'm not, but we did not give you a list of bylaw amendments. We have a number of them. We're talking internally about how to get the village bylaw over the goal line, and then what sort of low stress, corrective and minor change things we might piggyback on that hearing process, and then some sort of low, medium, high stress, other bylaw amendments, especially as we start to be responsive to housing need. And we'll be bringing that to you, and you can talk amongst yourselves.
And we often get requests from the DRB for bylaw changes to clarify things that they haven't worked out.
Yes.
And I'm aware that there's an item that the Conservation Commission would like to see a bylaw change about.
Yeah, I wonder if Simon's still on. I don't see him.
Some in mind.
He is.
Oh, wait,
He
he's
is.
Right there.
yeah, maybe because I'm not aware of like Simon, if
Okay, I'm confusing two things too.
oh,
But what I was wondering is, should we ask the HAC and the Conservation Commission, and the DRB will automatically say, we will
yeah,
through you guys will say what things would help them, but should we solicit as we're for the bylaw possibilities, should we say other things that are pending by these other town boards?
yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I'm not sure what the Conservation Commission it may have to do with something about significant wildlife habitat.
Yeah, and I don't know if they want something about the 30 by 30, you know, the 30%.
Oh,
Preserved lands by 2030.
oh, yeah, yeah.
And the actual specific thing I was thinking of is from Reed, but it's not from the Conservation Commission, so I was conflating two things.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's like there's various approaches to bylaw amendments, and one is for the planning commission to kind of more direct the process and say like, oh,
Yeah.
well, we would really like to see you know, amendments that address like, you know, for example, energy, we'd like the energy committee to work on those, or
It's another one I'd like to know.
yeah. You know, or sometimes committees can be gung-ho, sort of like, you know, we want to work on some bylaw amendments to like bring to the planning commission. And
I mean, in the past, it's been a pretty iterative process where, you know, thinking about like the wildlife
yeah,
chapter, you know, and
Mhm.
we'll like consult with the Conservation Commission, and they get a, you know, they solicit, if they do like a first round set of changes or updates or whatever,
mhm,
and then we have a conversation about it. If we need more information, it goes back to them, or
Yep.
if we meet together.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a quite fluid process already, at least based
Yeah.
on past big picture bylaw amendments, so
yeah,
like I assume that we'll continue along those lines.
mhm,
I'm glad you mentioned the energy committee too, because they're one that I know has several potential ones, for instance, saying that new homes have to meet a certain energy standard,
mhm,
because it's kind of silly to build new construction that doesn't meet goals that we already have as a
mhm,
country and a state and a town.
mhm.
When we heard from Chris Snyder that he's planning to put natural gas furnaces in 384 new homes
Mhm.
and not any heat pumps. It feels to me like he's out of sync with the goals of the energy plan and the town and the state and federal goals and worldwide goals. So there's a possibility that we should be addressing some of that kind of things in our bylaws.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, to some degree, some of those, like the energy plan and, you know, now we have an energy chapter that we didn't used to, so,
Mhm.
so that's going to be a more kind of organic
Well,
connection.
yeah, we talked about at this round on the town plan,
Yeah.
integrating the appendix, it's the energy plan.
Exactly,
into the
that's where
other
we're going,
chapters.
yeah,
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that's at the town plan level, but
yeah,
at the bylaw level,
sure,
there are, the energy plan is part of our town plan now, and it has things in it that are not being followed because there's no enforcement mechanism.
yeah.
And I didn't know if the energy committee would like to recommend some bylaw changes to help us achieve the goals of the town plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in their work plan and, you know, something that's on their list. So yeah, they will be looking at that.
All right, any other pieces of information on that, Melinda? Or plan?
Yeah, I guess, you know, so probably, okay, probably we'll be putting together some kind of either in-meeting survey or out-of-meeting survey that kind of asks you to take a look at a list of possible amendments and kind of give us well, I think this is going to be a really heavy lift. This, you know, seems like it'd be fairly simple and straightforward. And like, I guess in terms of how much time you think it might take to kind of go through the amendment process and adopt kind of thing, just so we get a sense of what we might piggyback on, you know, sort of put together as a package, and then like what amendments we may kind of need to spend a lot of time on.
Based on our history, I think it would be good if the staff could take a first guess at that.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
say, we think these are gonna be heavier, more complicated,
Mm,
you know, because they touch a lot of chapters or something like that.
yeah,
Or because growth management's involved or something along
Right.
those lines. My experience is that the planning commission's conversation will expand if
Yeah.
the amount that is there and,
Yeah.
what's that?
Never does.
You know,
yeah,
and so. And
Mhm.
so that's one point, but then the other piece is that, it's often really hard to predict,
yeah,
like,
it's
you
true.
know, you think it seems like a small issue and pretty straightforward, but then someone comes in with a different perspective, it's like, oh,
Mhm,
right, yeah, we haven't thought of it that way, and this is actually a whole big thing.
mhm.
So. Yeah, I think that the staff probably have a more intimate sense of some of these, especially the ones that touch a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
And so maybe if you folks could do a little bit of triage anyway, not to say that we couldn't kind of raise things up on the list or something, but,
mhm.
I think that would be really helpful.
Sure, yeah.
Like, don't leave it all to us, because we'll just rank everything that's like super important.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So I want to make sure I understand. It was on the agenda to talk about the work plan. And I'm assuming now we're talking about a short-term work plan item, which is bylaw amendments.
Yeah, I think that was, my understanding was it was really just to talk about or just to mention that we would like to package together some bylaw amendments
Yes.
and not to discuss the work plan in general, but
Oh, okay, because with the Taft Corner zone, you know, the form-based code and now the Glacier plan,
yeah,
what we thought we were gonna work on in the fall hasn't happened at all, which is the affordable housing or inclusionary zoning and the town zoning update. The village.
village zoning, yeah.
So those two items are still hanging.
Mhm.
We typically, at least once a year, are looking at some requests for bylaw changes, and so I thought we were talking about that short-term thing. And then next year, we have the process that's starting with a rollout to the public of the town
Plan, yeah.
which is a whole
Right.
different thing, and so am I in the right?
You are, yeah, and so just to maybe provide some clarification, my take on the work plan items that you mentioned. I think that the village stuff, I think we're hoping that that can be brought to conclusion sooner, like sooner rather than later, like, you know, hopefully in the next couple of months, I would think. I think, but Emily knows more about that than I do because she's kind of doing,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to talk over you.
no worries, yeah.
But there's been a 6-month hiatus in that project, and so the people who
Yeah.
were participating may need to be brought back up to speed or even reminded that they did participate and we heard them.
Yeah, yeah,
So that may slow it down a little bit, because I agree there's not that much more work to do if all the changes
right.
that we went through and approved were incorporated.
Yeah.
I apologize for it.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so I understand that. And so, you know, it could take anywhere between like 2 to 6 months, but overlapping with that, I think will be the needs assessment, working on affordable housing, supportive bylaw amendments, both low hanging fruit and at least perhaps discussing the heavier lifts items, like inclusionary zoning, as well as there are some other sort of low hanging fruit bylaw amendments related to accessory uses and you know, some other assorted things.
Is it okay just to, we really need a work plan because it needs to be in front of us what we're pushing out when we do something else.
Mhm.
And we don't have a work plan right now with any kind of schedule.
So it sounds like we need to kind of update the work plan
Yeah.
and sort of re-present it and kind of go fresh from there. Is what I'm
An
hearing.
item for me is that I felt as though we all admitted the form-based code was new and might need some tweaking.
Mhm.
And so I've been expecting some projects to come in or some things to trigger us. Looking at that, looking at what tweaks are needed.
Uh-huh.
And I don't want that to blindside us or to continue to push out the things we've been pushing out that are
Yeah,
already invested in.
yeah. As far as the form-based code in Taft Corner, it's been pretty quiet. Like I haven't heard any major, any major projects are coming in right now. I mean, there's been some minor, very minor stuff that's come. Mostly related to signage and
Change of use.
change of use,
Standard
yeah.
permitting that is just happening in a different. In a form-based code now.
Yeah, but we will definitely, we'll keep you apprised if anything major is coming through that you should know about. So yeah, I mean, but we can definitely draw up a renewed work plan chart, just for your benefit, so you know what you're gonna be working on for the next, at least, 6 months to a year out. But yeah, I mean, as far as town plan, we can really expect that effort to be starting. I would say this, spring and summer, really starting to do outreach for that.
That when does it need to be adopted by?
20, let's see, I can't remember the month, but I thought it was late in the year in the 2025.
Okay.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
Yeah, the last one was 2017.
Mhm. But I think we it's really 2016 to 2020. Yeah, I don't know. It's 2025.
Right.
All right. Anything else for us, Melinda?
Not on the agenda.
Okay.
I was thinking this might be a short meeting tonight. So
Yeah.
you guys have been doing some
Over
pretty
your
long ones.
objections, we might end that early.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments?
Ellie hasn't said much. How are you?
All good, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, seems like short meetings have been an unusual
Enjoyable
yes, for
weekend.
us lately. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn. There was one. Ellie, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to assume everyone's in favor of that because, who wouldn't be? And so we will call the meeting adjourned at 7:52. And I look forward to seeing you all in the first Tuesday of March. February. Yeah, I wish for March.
Ooh.
January. January is a blue moon month for planning commission because we have 5 Tuesdays.
Mm.
So we'll get a little 3-week interlude.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah.
February 7th.
That's right, February 7th. Okay, great. Thanks for joining. Bye. Thanks, Ruben.
Now that
Bye,
we have an
everyone.
actual for the specific plan, what's next there?